Hello, my name's Annette with Sunbeam Fabric Art. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to have some fun with some beautiful fabrics and some pre-printed homemade batting with a crazy quilt pattern. I will leave a link in the description to how I made my stencil and how I made this pre-printed batting. I'm cutting these batting squares out, giving myself about an inch extra around the outside of this crazy quilt block. Here's a look at the stencil I made, and you can see it has numbers, so I have to sew these pieces on in the order of the numbers. I used my stencil to make another template on a piece of paper so I could cut out the individual 10 pieces of this crazy quilt block. And here we have all 10 pieces. I'm using parts and pieces of the wedding dress for this crazy quilt as well. I'm going to do the wedding dress fabric on piece 1, 7, and 10 of this block. Now for foundation paper piecing, I would have my fabric wrong side up when cutting out the pieces. This I'm going quilt as you go, so I am actually having this fabric right side up to cut out my pieces. So of the wedding dress fabric, I cut out one piece of piece 1, piece 7, and piece 10. The rest of the pieces for this block were cut out of various colored print fabrics that I have in my stash and in my scrap pile. To start assembling this block on our pre-printed batting, I'm looking at piece 1 and 2. What I'm going to be doing is placing the fabric for piece 1 and the fabric for piece 2. I'm going to be placing those right sides together and stitching along that line between piece 1 and piece 2. Here's that seam I just stitched. I'm going to go ahead and trim away a little bit of this excess bulk here, and then I'll finger press the seam open. Now I'm going to add piece 3 to the mix. So I'm kind of putting down the pattern piece for piece 3, making sure that my fabric is in the right place. Then I'm going to put fabric piece 3 right sides together with piece 1 and stitch on that seam line. And here you can see that seam I just stitched. I'm going to finger press that open. Now I'm checking my stencil just to kind of get an idea of where piece number 4 goes. So double checking that, and I see where piece number 4 goes. So I'm placing the puzzle piece for piece number 4 right on top of the pattern where it goes. Then I'm putting this fabric right sides together, but I'm overlapping piece number 4 just a little bit, so I know I'm going to have that seam line covered up. Then I can just pull out that pattern piece and take this to the sewing machine and stitch it. Next, I place piece number 5 on my block to get it in the right position, like a puzzle piece. Take that fabric, place it right sides together, overlapping my puzzle piece, so I have a seam allowance, and then I will stitch on that line. Now it's time to add piece number 6. So once again, I lay the puzzle piece down on the pattern. I place my fabric right sides together, overlapping my pattern piece, so I have a seam allowance. Now we are adding piece 7. Again, I place the puzzle piece on my pattern. I lay my fabric right sides together, overlapping enough for a seam allowance. Now in this case, with that white wedding dress fabric, I wanted to cut away that dark fabric so it wouldn't show through my wedding dress fabric. I hope you can see that if you don't sew exactly on the stitch line, it's going to be just fine. Now I'm ready to add piece 8, but I see that there's a little excess there, so I cut that away so I make sure I'm not covering up where piece 9 is going to be going next. Laying piece 8 on my puzzle pattern, then putting that fabric right sides together, overlapping my puzzle piece just a little bit, and then I stitch that seam. Now adding piece 9, we lay it down on the puzzle template. We place the fabric right sides together, overlapping our puzzle piece, and stitch that seam. Now it's time to add the last piece, number 10, which is the wedding dress fabric. So I'm laying that right sides together, overlapping the puzzle piece by about 1/4 inch. Now I did have a little overlap, so I will trim that away later after I stitch the seam. And here is our almost finished quilt block. Now it's time to have some fun with decorative stitching. For the backing of this Quilt As You Go block, I'm using a green 10" by 10" square. Now, just to let you know, if you need your finished block to be a certain size, cut your backing fabric a little larger if you're going to do decorative stitching, because that is going to cause the fabric to shrink up a little bit. In the end, I ended up trimming this to 9 3/4 inches. That is about how much shrinkage I got with all the decorative stitching I did. This little card came with my Singer sewing machine, and it's my reference guide for decorative stitching. On this block, I'm going to use a few different ones, so you will get to see how it looks with a few different stitches. I think this block turned out really, really pretty. As I said, I trimmed it down to 9 3/4 inches. My stencil is actually a little bit smaller. My block turned out a little bit bigger than the stencil, and that's not a big deal. If you needed this block to be 10, 12 inches, you could easily add on fabrics around the outside or make those outer pieces just a little bit bigger. If you're enjoying my content, I invite you to subscribe and then hit that little bell icon to get notified when I post new videos. As always, I hope that you have fun with your sewing. I know I sure had fun with this block. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see you back again real soon.